Hold on, I gotta close my window.
Ow.
Stop watching your TikToks.
I was waiting for you. Jeez. Wasn't even watching for that long. Literally like half a second.
It's funny.
You were already
I
ready to
caught you. I caught
get
you.
in.
Wait, let me make you the whole screen. My Hanson Granson.
Ew.
You hate me?
Yeah, that's what it means.
Okay, do you remember what happened last time?
Um, not the very last thing.
Well, what do you remember?
Um,
They were looking for Shi Ching Xuan.
yes. Um, you gotta remind me. It just left.
So they were looking for Shi Ching Xuan, and then Shi Ching Xuan couldn't open his eyes because he was too scared, and then he couldn't hear anything because he has his earplugs in, and he's being taken away by this guy. So Shilian is like, wait, I have an idea. I have a soul shifting spell so that we trade places. And then they trade places, and Hua Cheng
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
is so anxious that he just punches Ming Yi into a hole in
Mm-hmm.
the ground
Yes,
because he
yes,
can't hit
yes.
Shi Jingxuan. And so Shilian's with the Reverend, and let me see if there's anything relevant that I need to go over. Oh yeah, Shilian fights the Reverend, and the Reverend starts needling him, trying to get him nervous. And Shilian's like, "You can't do anything to me." And then he starts threatening Hua Cheng's life, and then Shilian got all upset,
Mm-hmm.
and then he like enchanted one of Shi Jingxuan's like necklace or something, like one of his treasures that he has on him to protect him. Um, and then Shi Jingxuan was like, "From today on, you're my other best friend." And then they switched back, and they figured out that she they figured out that the figure was taking Shi Jingxuan to this place called the Terrace of Cascading Wine, which is where Shi Jingxuan originally ascended. And
Right.
Shilian locked his body in this hut with all these wards around it so that nothing could get in. And so they make their way over to the Terrace of Cascading Wine, and when they show up there, they find that the doors are open. And that's where it ended.
Ooh. Okay.
Okay. Chapter 56. From a designed prison, doors open to greet the ghost. "Where is he?" Shilian asked. The three entered the small pavilion, but there was no one within. The spiritual devices and treasures were set up exactly as they had been before, but since the doors had been opened, they were now useless. "Lord Windmaster, where are you?" Shilian shouted in the communication array. They had been focused on rushing here, and Shi Jingxuan had been so distraught that Shilian had proposed that he meditate to calm down, to stop thinking and saying nonsense and scaring himself. Shi Jingxuan had Shi Qingxuan had thought the suggestion was very sensible, and gradually stopped talking, so the lack of chatter on the way over didn't seem like cause for concern. That was why Shilian hadn't noticed anything amiss. But now, no matter how he yelled, there was no answer. A sense of foreboding spread within his mind. In a situation like this, there could only be two possibilities. Either Shi Qingxuan deliberately wasn't responding, or he had lost consciousness. Every single one of the dozens of spiritual devices and treasures on the Windmaster's person was a rare and precious item, and Chilean had used all of them to set the formation of the array. Nothing should have been able to break through so easily. Even if it could be done, it would at least take 3 days and nights, just as Shi Qingxuan himself had said. What's more, it would be impossible not to leave evidence of a break-in, but from the look of things, the pavilion's doors and windows were all intact, and there were no tunnels or ladders to be found. Shilian returned to the entrance and collected the golden lock from the ground to inspect it. He really did open the doors himself. Why would he welcome in his own doom when he knew reinforcements would arrive at any moment? Shilian couldn't understand. He said he wouldn't open the doors to anyone other than us, so why did he do just that? Maybe he thought we were the ones at the door? Ming Yi said gravely. A grim scene played out in Shilian's mind when he heard this theory. He pictured 3 individuals, one wearing his face, one wearing Hua Cheng's, and one wearing Ming Yi's. They knocked on the pavilion's doors, and an overjoyed Shi Qingxuan rushed to welcome them inside. Then the 3 people surrounded him, their smiles eerie. The golden lock in Shi Qingxuan's hand fell to the ground by his feet, never to be picked up. Shilian shook his head. That's impossible. I've never heard that the Reverend of Empty Words had the ability to disguise itself. Maybe it called for helpers, Ming Yi said. Shilian considered this, but dismissed it. Everything we ran into today was sudden and unforeseen. We hadn't predicted we would need an array to protect the Windmaster, so it shouldn't have been able to round up ghosts to help on such short notice. And didn't we tell Lord Windmaster that we'd call to him with the communication array when we got here? It should have been easy to figure out who was outside, and whether they were real or fake, by just asking us in the group array. How could he be so easily deceived? Shilian came to an abrupt halt. Unless he was told to open the doors by someone he knew, he mumbled. Someone he knew? Ming Yi questioned. How so? His ears were plugged. He couldn't hear, Hua Cheng pointed out just then. Shilian seized his arm and exclaimed, Well said, Sun Lang! It was exactly for that reason I determined it must be someone he knew. Because Lord Windmaster had his ears plugged, he wouldn't have been able to hear anything from the outside, unless he removed the earplugs, but why would he do that? No, he was so terrified he'd die first, and so there was only one way he could have been deceived into opening the door. The private communication array. Shilian started to pace. Which means that while we were on our way over, someone secretly connected with Lord Windmaster and told him something that made him open up. And it had to be someone he was close with, because otherwise they wouldn't know Lord Windmaster's verbal password. Heavenly officials' verbal passwords were strictly guarded secrets, not to be shared freely with just anyone, and especially not with nefarious creatures like the Reverend of Empty Words. Furthermore, it must have been someone he trusted deeply, or else he wouldn't have opened the doors so carelessly. Or, Hua Cheng offered, he didn't know the person, but the person knew him. And when they came knocking, they came bearing something that gave him no choice but to open the doors. Shilian gave serious consideration to that possibility. Theoretically, we can send messages to Lord Windmaster as long as we have his verbal password. But wouldn't Lord Windmaster find it odd if a stranger's voice started speaking to him out of nowhere? He would have told us in the communication array the moment he heard. Unless this mysterious individual who sent the private communication paralyzed him with their very first message. But what kind of message could possibly do that? A threat? Ming Yi wondered. How? If you don't come out, I'll tell your brother I've returned to harass you? Shilian dismissed the thought. Not likely. The Reverend of Empty Words wasn't necessarily aware of Shi Qingxuan's worries, and furthermore, it wasn't a heavenly official. How could it even contact the Watermaster to announce its existence? Reinforcements were arriving within the hour, but Shi Qingxuan couldn't even wait that long. Whether the creature even stood a chance against the Watermaster was another matter entirely. It was worth remembering that it had never harassed Shi Wudu. Its eyes were dead set on Shi Qingxuan, specifically picking the lower-hanging fruit. It was clear that the Reverend was very wary of the Watermaster, so it wouldn't directly provoke him. Searching for another hour. One last time, Ming Yi said. Shilian understood what he meant and nodded. Okay, If we still can't find him after an hour, Lord Watermaster must be informed of the situation, no matter how much Windmaster protests. Let's split up. We'll search over here, and Lord Earthmaster, please search over there." Ming Yi turned around and left without a word. Shilian searched the area on fleet feet, and all the while he never gave up calling for Shi Qingxuan in the communication array. However, there was nothing but dead silence on the other line. "How goes it?" Hua Cheng asked. Shilian shook his head. No response whatsoever. His sense of foreboding was growing stronger. He searched every room of every pavilion, and had gone through almost every building in the surrounding area, but there was no trace of Shi Qingxuan at all. Soon the two came to the tallest pavilion around. This pavilion was obviously the star of the surrounding buildings, the centerpiece. It had been renovated multiple times and stood in an impressive magnificence, with a number of poetry verses written on the walls. Shilian raised his head to look at the establishment plaque, which read, "The Terrace of Cascading Wine." Is it referring to the young lord who poured wine? He wondered out loud. That's right, Hua Cheng confirmed. This indeed is where the tale of the young lord who poured wine took place. Shilian looked at him. So it really is all related? Mm-hmm, Hua Cheng replied, then briefly gave an account. Let me drink.
This fucking car has been the car alarm nonstop.
Awesome.
It stopped and then it went back on.
Awesome. As the tale went, when Shi Qingxuan was still mortal, he would often come to this place after training to lounge on the terrace and drink. He was happy, carefree, and always quite inebriated. One day, a wicked crook came along. The crook often bullied the good people of the nearby village. When Shi Qingxuan spotted him from his perch on the terrace high above, he cast a little spell and then leisurely poured down wine from his cup. The wine spilled onto the crook's head and knocked him out in an instant. After Shi Wudu appointed him a deputy general, Shi Qingxuan still loved the mortal realm, and he continued to drink at this place as he had before, and he ascended while he was doing just that. Ascending while knocking back cups sounded a bit absurd, but it actually wasn't that silly. Sometimes chance arrives without any rhyme or reason. For example, Shilian himself was fast asleep and dreaming strange dreams when his ascension happened. Perhaps in the future someone's bathroom break would be interrupted by their own ascension. That would certainly be quite the sight. In any case, scholars and poets always loved visiting places that served the settings for historical legends and tales. Such spots would always inspire intellectuals to raise their brushes and express their longing for such a heavenly lifestyle. Shilian now understood that this was one of those landmarks. There were no tourists in the middle of the night, but there would surely be many the next day, and they would be met with the astonishing sight of blown away houses and trees, and would surely cry that the Windmaster paid a visit. Nevertheless, the renowned tale of the young... 3? What are you doing to me?
This is the third time. This is the third time this shit is happening.
Oh, I can't even hear it, man. Nevertheless, the renowned tale of the young lord who poured wine was slightly different from what Shilian had imagined. Just then he heard Hua Cheng say darkly, "Guga, I need to go take care of something. A trifle. Please be careful. I won't be long." Take care of what? Shilian wondered. When he recalled Hua Cheng's angry tone in the private communication array, and now saw his unfriendly demeanor, he asked, "Are you going to seek out the Reverend of Empty Words?" Hua Cheng paused for a moment, then replied, "No." Since it wasn't that, then it wasn't his place to press further. Shilian nodded. "You were only here for fun anyway. Since something's come up, just go. Please take care of yourself, too." "I will," Hua Cheng said. After a pause, he added, "When I come back, I'll tell you something." Shilian blinked. "Tell me what?" But Hua Cheng had already disappeared. After an hour, there was still nothing, and Shilian called out to Ming Yi in the communication array. "Lord Earthmaster, how are things going on your end? I haven't found him here, so I'm coming back." "Nothing," Ming Yi answered. "This won't do. I can't hold my tongue any longer," Shilian said. "Let's meet up at the center of the Terrace of Cascading Wine. I'm going to report to Lord Watermaster right now." With that, he mentally recited the verbal password to Ling Wen's private communication array. "Ling Wen, are you there? Can you find Lord Watermaster? Please tell him to meet us at the Terrace of Cascading Wine at his soonest convenience. It's urgent." The clear voice of a man rang next to his ear. It sounded like Ling Wen was in his male form at the moment. Your Highness, Lord Watermaster is here with me right now. He's not someone who likes heading out and about, so he probably won't descend. What business do you have with him? I can pass on the message. Julien had almost reached the main building of the Terrace of Cascading Wine, and he spotted something hanging from one of the balconies. It looked like a white cloth ceaselessly fluttering in the night breeze. Julien was stricken. Was there something there before? When he watched closer, he finally saw what it was. Wasn't that Shi Qingxuan's outer robe? Ming Yi's voice came roaring over the communication array. Your Highness, come to the tallest pavilion of the Terrace of Cascading Wine. Hurry! Julien jolted. On the other end of the communication array, Ling Wen asked, Your Highness, are you still there? Please have Lord Watermaster descend as soon as possible, Julien exclaimed. Something happened to Lord Windmaster. After shouting that last message, he charged up the pavilion. There were no more sounds from the other end of the line. Ling Wen was probably shocked by his message and was reporting the situation to Shi Wudu. When Julien made it to the highest floor, a person was sprawled out in the middle of the room. It was Shi Qingxuan. Shi Qingxuan's eyes were shut tight. He had no external injuries, nor were there traces of blood. Ming Yi helped him upright, and as he tugged at Shi Qingxuan's unconscious body, something clattered to the ground from where it had been resting on his chest. As Julien looked closer at that fallen item, he felt his heart tighten. It was the Windmaster's fan, and it had been snapped in half. This absolute jewel of a spiritual device could only be chanced upon. One could spend centuries attempting to forge something like it, and still not succeed. It was the Windmaster's primary spiritual device, and yet it had been so easily destroyed. When we looked in here earlier, there was no one, Julien exclaimed. But as he spoke, he noticed something amiss that he hadn't spotted before. When he and Huacheng had searched this chamber, the room's walls showcased dozens of poetry verses that had been left by scholarly tourists, some graceful and flowing, some wild and arrogant, and others proper and focused. But now they were all gone, as if someone had wiped them clean. The only thing left behind was a phrase that hadn't been there before, written in large crimson script that seemed to drip like blood. Wretched beginning, wretched end. That was the very same curse the Reverend of Empty Words bestowed on Shi Qingxuan when he was born. Your Highness, where's the one who was with you? Ming Yi asked suddenly. Julien began to fret. Oh no, Sun Lang left at such an inopportune moment. The moment Huacheng left his side, something happened to Shi Qingxuan. This really couldn't be explained away easily. However, Julien did not allow his distress to show. I asked him to go search for the Reverend of Empty Words, he explained solemnly. When did he leave? Ming Yi asked. Julien replied without batting an eye. Just now. I don't think he's been gone for even half an incense time. The truth was, it was much longer ago than that. But Julien himself never doubted Huacheng, so he naturally wouldn't allow anyone a chance to suspect him. It prevented any issues that might arise from such a misunderstanding. Thunder rolled in waves in the skies overhead. Let me drink. Thunder rolled in waves in the skies overhead. An 8-wheeled golden carriage broke through the clouds and drove towards them menacingly. As he'd been unable to reach the Terrace of Cascading Wine using the teleportation array, it seemed Shi Wudu had gone straight for a golden carriage. It must be said that riding forth from the heavens driving a golden carriage pulled by burnished metal horses was a rather huge fanfare. There would doubtless be an uproar in the mortal realm if he was spotted by anyone out stargazing at this hour. The water tyrant really wasn't afraid of anything. The golden carriage bore down on them threateningly, and Julien made an urgent request of Ming Yi. Lord Earthmaster, if any heavenly officials should ask, please don't say a word about Hua Chengzi. Many of those in the heavenly court like to exaggerate and fabricate stories. This case has nothing to do with him, so there's no need to complicate things. Ming Yi gave him a look. Very well. He agreed surprisingly easily, then looked down to keep an eye on Shi Qingxuan's condition. Julien let out a sigh of relief, but seeing the unmoving Windmaster, his heart sank once more. The golden carriage roared closer and closer, trailing propitious clouds behind it, and finally landed. A small team of junior heavenly officials stood at the ready outside the carriage, and 3 grand heavenly officials exited the vehicle: Shi Wudu, Pei Ming, and Ling Wen. 3 of the Mid-Autumn Banquet's top 10 had come at once. Of course, Chilian had long since forgotten that he himself was the first of that top 10. With a flick of his sleeve, Shiwudu disembarked the carriage wearing a frown and deeply knitted brows. Watermaster fan in hand, he entered the pavilion with Pei Ming and Ling Wen following behind. The moment he saw his younger brother lying on the ground like a corpse, his expression changed and he rushed over. Qingxuan! Qingxuan! What happened? Lord Windmaster ran into the Reverend of Empty Words, Shilian succinctly explained. What did you say? Shiwudu exclaimed in disbelief. The Reverend of Empty Words? At the sound of that name, it wasn't only Shiwudu's face that dropped, but Pei Ming's and Ling Wen's as well. It seemed they'd long known of Shiwudu's scourge. Watching them, Shilian couldn't determine if anyone was faking or secretly delighted. They were all acting naturally. Especially Shiwudu. There was no way he was acting. Ling Wen retrieved a collection of bottles and vials from his sleeve. Try feeding him one of these. Feeding him these one by one, sorry. Pei Ming simply remarked, It's you again, your highness. An unlucky coincidence, Shilian replied. There are only so many of us milling around in the heavens. It seems that every time we see you, the other one is involved somehow. I wonder if it's true this time, too? No, of course not, Shilian replied coolly. He was lying through his teeth, but Ming Yi surprisingly kept his promise and didn't say a word on the matter. Pei Ming stopped talking, and with a wave of his hand he led the officials under his command in a search of the premises. Given the situation, it was actually better that Huacheng had left. At least he wasn't caught at the scene of the crime. Shiwudu couldn't wake Shi Jingxuan, but he inadvertently glanced at the giant, bloody words scrawled on the snow-white wall, and his face twisted at the sight of them. He paled whiter than the wall, and his entire body began to shake with fury. Who wrote this? Who wrote it? Even though he was shouting, his voice was trembling. Just then, Ling Wen exclaimed, Lord Windmaster is awake. Shilian instantly bent down. Lord Windmaster? Shi Jingxuan's eyes slowly blinked open. Shiwudu shoved everyone aside and exclaimed, Jingxuan, are you all right? Do you feel pain anywhere? Who hurt you? Shi Jingxuan was dazed for a good while before he gradually came around. When he fully regained consciousness, the first thing he saw was Shiwudu. And then something happened that no one could have expected. Shi Jingxuan shoved Shiwudu away, clutching his own head, and screamed. And that's the end of the chapter.
Whoa.
And there he is screaming.
Dude, he's suffering.
He's suffering. My poor boy.
His fucking fan.
My poor they them. I know, that's his fan. It's his spiritual device. Makes me feel things.
Yeah, what kind of things?
Sad.
Dude, Gilgamesh last night was crazy.
Yeah, I love Peter Pringle.
The translation really got me.
Where are my glasses?
Hi. Come here. Come say hi. August, say hi.
Hi, Whisker. Wigger. Dude, we're so close to the coffin boner scene. I can't wait.
Wow. Did you hear that, Wesker?
He doesn't give